posted a few videos now about fishing for sockeye salmon on the Russian, and I've had a few questions about the tackle I'm using or how you fish for them, and so I thought I'd make a quick video to address those things. First thing is going to be the rod. So I choose to use a fly rod, but you can use a bait caster or a spinning rod. You'll see plenty of people using all three types of those rods there. I like a fly rod because I think it's easier to fish with. There's tends to be less tangles with the repetitive motion of flipping the line out there. So I choose to use a fly rod, but you can use whatever you want. I don't recommend using an expensive rod. The weights that you're going to be throwing on here are fairly heavy, and they have a tendency to pop out of the fish, or the hook pulls from the fish, and so sometimes they'll fly back and hit the rod. So I've seen quite a few people break their expensive Sage, or if you were using like a Winston or the Beulahs or their Scotts. So I use a relatively cheap fly rod. This is an ugly stick. It's a 8 or 9 weight, and I have it paired with a Lamson liquid fly reel. It's got 30-pound fly line on it. Pretty standard, so nothing expensive about it, and it's my preference for fishing reds. As far as the rod setup goes, like I said, I have 30-pound line on here, and then I'm going to attach a small section of mono. I'm using just a loop-to-loop connection on this one, but you can use a nail knot to connect your mono to your fly line if you don't have a loop on there. And then I run maybe about 2 or 3 feet down to an inline weight, and I'll address the inline weights here in a few minutes. But I like using an inline weight. I think it causes less snags out there, so my preference is to use an inline weight. From the weight, this is probably the most important piece, is the second piece of mono I'm going to attach to this. That's going to be attached to the fly on the other end. It's important that this length be, my preference is between 4 and 6 feet, and I really like that 5 to 6 feet length. So really important that you keep that leader in that zone. If you ask any Alaskan what their setup is, they're probably going to each give you something different. My experience is that 5 to 6 foot length is kind of the money zone. So I almost always have a 5 to 6 foot piece here from my inline weight down to my fly. That's pretty much the rod setup. So we're going to be finished with that, and let's talk about the hooks and the weights. So this is the tackle that I typically choose to use. First up here is a Mustad hook. This is their Russian hook that's made specifically for the Russian River. The Russian has limitations on the space that can be between the hook point and the shaft of the hook, and this falls within those regulations. And Mustad's one of the few companies I know of that's making a hook just for the Russian. The second hook that I have right here is a Gamakatsu Octopus 2/0. This is what I choose to use on the middle kenai. And the next two are the inline weights I was referencing before. So this one right here is 3/8, and this is a 1/2 ounce. And these are the two sizes that I typically use. I very rarely have to go heavier than those, and usually I don't go lighter than 3/8. So with these weights, you're going to be pretty well set up for anywhere you're going to be fishing. So here I have an example of 2 different hooks. The one on the left is the Mustad one I was just referencing. And the one on the right is one that you can pretty much buy in any Alaska sporting goods store. I have removed you can see some of the material here from the fly. I did cut that away so you could see the shaft of the hook a little bit better, but there's a definite quality difference between these. The one on the left is quite a bit thicker and stronger. The one on the right is thinner, and I've actually, when I originally started fishing and using those, I would have the hooks break on me. So I kind of got away from using those store-bought ones or pre-made flies like that, and started buying the Mustad ones on the left, and just tying my own flies for these. And I haven't had any of those hooks break, so I would recommend doing that if you're into fly tying and going to be fishing on the Russian. Here is a package of the Gamakatsu hooks I was referencing. This is a package of 25. You can get them in less than that. I typically buy them in the 25 packs because I usually tie about that many for the year. The next thing I want to talk about is how you actually snag or hook one of these fish. So I had a couple questions about that, about am I snagging them, are they biting? And the answer is I'm snagging them in the mouth, or hooking them in the mouth, but they are not biting. And there's a technique to fishing for these to make that happen. And that's what we're going to go through right now. All right, so let's go through a quick demonstration here on how to actually hook one of these fish. For the purposes of this demonstration, this is going to act as our fish. This is a wolf skull, and I have its mouth propped open. And then this is going to be our fly line. Now, just to be clear, this is the weight I was talking about in the video earlier. And here's the fly I'm using. This piece connecting the two together. This is that piece that I said should be 4 to 6 feet, with 5 to 6 feet being my personal preference. So I've made it shorter for this video just so you can see everything, but this should be 4 to 6 feet. Okay, so when you're gonna actually fish for these, you're going to cast your line out, and you can watch my video and kind of see how I'm casting. I'm using a fly line, but it's not true fly fishing. I'm just flipping the line out there, typically upriver at about 45 degrees, so something like this, up from me, and then it's floating down like this. Now the key is this weight needs to be bouncing along the bottom. It doesn't need to be heavy on the bottom and dragging real hard, but it needs to be bouncing. So it goes downriver like this. The fly will then stay usually pretty straight out from it and a little bit higher up in the water column. So this will be close to the bottom and this will be up. Now when you get down to about 45 below you, that's typically when you're gonna pull back. And when you pull back is when you're actually gonna hook the fish. So I'd cast out like this, it'd be going, it's floating down, it gets down to about 45, I'm gonna pull back. As I pull back, this, since the fish doesn't bite, this is where you hook the fish in the mouth. So I've pulled back, and this fly line is going to go into the fish's mouth. As it goes upriver, it's has water going through its mouth, funneling the water over its gills so it can breathe. And it'll get that line stuck in its mouth, and as I pull it, this fly is going to catch it in the mouth. Now it sounds impossible, I can completely understand, but it is not. As you saw from the video, I did it pretty regularly. I did snag some of them, so I didn't actually hook them in the mouth. I hooked them in other parts of the body, but I was releasing those fish as you saw. So the ones I kept were hooked in this manner, and this is how everybody that is fishing for them, this is the method they're using. This is floating down, they're pulling back, snagging them in the mouth. The big key to this is the weight, so making sure it's not too heavy so it doesn't get stuck on the bottom or in the rocks, and then having a good fly and that leader length. Otherwise it's just a matter of flipping it out up at 45, you let it drift down, and at about 45 below you, you'll pull back. And I like to keep the rod tip close to the water when I pull back, because it pulls this back at a better angle, I feel. So I'll pull back, and then once this hits, you're going to feel that fish, and it's going to feel like you hit a wall. And it's really just a matter of flipping this out over and over and over again, letting it drift, pulling it back, throwing it back up, and just doing this repeatedly until you hook the fish. Now in my last video I was spot fishing them, so you know, if this is the fish, I was seeing the fish in the water, and then I was throwing out above it and then letting that line drift down until I could see it right by the fish, and then I was pulling back. So in the video, if you see me staring at the water, it doesn't look like I'm doing anything. I'm looking for this guy, this fish, to be swimming upstream so I can cast in front of him and get this in his mouth. So that's just a quick demonstration on how you would fish for him. Like I said, it sounds very difficult, and it may prove to some to be difficult, but it really is an easy process, and the most difficult part is rigging your rod up. So if you have your rod rigged up in the manner that I'm talking about, you'll likely hook fish. Now whether or not you hook them in the mouth, maybe the hard part, but you will get on some fish. So I've caught hundreds of fish this way. My family fishes like this, and we catch a lot of fish. So that's all I got. That's the tackle, that's the setup, that's how I'm fishing for them. The one other piece of advice I could offer you is polarized sunglasses. So if you fish a lot, you probably already have them. If you don't and you plan on coming up here, you need polarized glasses. That is how I was able to spot all the fish in that video. Without these, I would not have seen any of those fish, and I likely would have caught fewer fish, if any fish. These are truly a game changer when you're fishing in the Russian or clear water. It allows you to sight fish and pull that rod back right when that line is where it needs to be. So polarized glasses is the way to go. That's all I got. I'll see you on the next video.